So there's been a huge run of international matches, and a lot of them are really entertaining and a lot of them are really fun. But I am just going to fixate on one because I can't believe it happened again. Iceland, Iceland, leave them alone. Iceland, oh, nation of maybe 400,000 people, Corpus Christi, Texas, floating on a frozen rock in the middle of the entire Atlantic Ocean. Leave England alone. Because in a friendly, but not a normal friendly, in a tune-up for the Euros friendly, right after I spent 4 to 5 days seeing tweets about how's this team going to lose the Euros and how do you beat this team, and if Gareth Southgate doesn't win the Euros with this team, he should be arrested, and all that sort of stuff, I watch England walk on the field and lose at home to Iceland. Now, this is not your granddad's Iceland. Right? And by your granddad's Iceland, I'm referring to Iceland in 2016, the team that made the Euros quarterfinal and qualified for the World Cup. You see, that Iceland cracked the top 20 in the world. The very least, they cracked the top 30, if I'm misremembering. But that team was good. That team won its qualifying group to get to the World Cup in Europe. Only big-time teams actually managed to pull that off. They didn't even backdoor their way into the World Cup. That Iceland team had game. It had talent. It had identity. It was playing super hard. The Iceland that just won in Wembley was playing super hard and still carries that identity. It just doesn't. It's not as good. The national team of Iceland is not as good as it was. It's 72nd in the world right now. Right? In the world rankings, you can ball them up and throw them out the window, but Iceland is not going to the Euros. Right? Iceland is not anywhere close to being a candidate to making it to the World Cup. They did not make it to the last World Cup, and they didn't make it to the Euros before that. This is an Iceland team that's missed out on the last 3 or 4 major tournaments, an Iceland team that did not make the playoff final even of qualifying. You know, we're talking about a tournament that Georgia made, Greece, who nearly beat Germany. They got into the playoff final of qualifying for the Euros, but not this Iceland team. No. And that brings me to this other point that I'm trying to make, because believe it or not, this is not just a me making fun of England video. I would love for it to just be that. It's hilarious to watch this happen over and over again, but it shouldn't. It should not be happening, right? And Gareth Southgate is not a bad manager. Right, but I have a theory, and I'm going to want you to hear me out on this, because I have an NCAA basketball team that I am a huge fan of. My university, the University of Virginia, is a very good college basketball team in the United States. Of course, college sports are a huge deal over here. If you don't understand it, just get with the program. We're super enthusiastic about it. We've learned cricket so well because you guys loved it that we ended up winning a couple of games of the Cricket World Cup. So we're even, right? But my college basketball team is notorious for playing with a slow pace and playing hard defense. Slow game, hard defense. It means less points are scored. But the issue in a situation that happens over and over again to my favorite team is that even though you're trying to play at max efficiency when less points are scored, there's fewer margin for error. Right? If the score, if 200 points are scored in the game, then the better team's more likely to have more of an opportunity to separate. But if 100 points are scored in the game, it's a lot harder, right? Every point has twice the value. It's a lot harder for the good team to separate. So here's my theory, because Gareth Southgate is not a bad coach. People are going to come flying out of the woodwork and bash him and say that he is a bad coach. He's not. Okay, the guy has taken this team he took a team with Jesse Lingard and Dele Alli, right? And Harry Maguire looked like a superstar in this team, for crying out loud. He took that team to a World Cup semifinal, okay, with like Marcus Rashford. It was that team to a World Cup semifinal. He then took a team that I thought was better to a Euros final that honestly they probably should have won. They lost on penalties. That's a lottery, and that's a brutal way to go. But that is far better than what England had been able to accomplish with, honestly, a way better team. Right? There's more cohesion, there was more tactical understanding, and there was more of an ability to win big tournament games under Gareth Southgate than there had been previously. There just were. Those are 2 of the best tournament results that England's had since it won the World Cup in the 60s, okay? And Gareth Southgate is responsible for both of them. It doesn't mean what he's doing is wrong, but what I think Gareth Southgate is doing is the same thing that my favorite college basketball team is doing. The Virginia Cavaliers, coached by Tony Bennett, slowing the game down and creating a smaller margin for error. Because the way that Gareth Southgate sets up his team to play, the way he has always set up his team to play, is to try to control the game, but not in the same way that the Pep Guardiola side controls the game. See, a Pep Guardiola side controls the game in the front third of the pitch. Gareth Southgate attempts to control the game in the other 2/3 of the pitch. I'm not saying Gareth Southgate's not trying to score. I'm not saying he's not trying to win. But Gareth Southgate damn sure wants to make sure that they're not giving up anything easy. He damn sure wants to make sure that they're going to be able to maintain that possession, and they're not going to be creating the same number of overloads. It's a steady, sure-handed approach that makes England incredibly difficult to beat. That's been borne out over his entire career as the manager of England. England's a very difficult team to beat. They're obviously not on a hot streak right now. But when you go into tournament play, as Jose Mourinho or any other great tournament coach can tell you, all it takes is one game that you lose to knock you out. But as long as you're not giving up goals, as long as you're controlling the large flow of the match, even if you're not creating overwhelming goal-scoring opportunities, you are going to have a better chance to win that tournament long-term. But I think England might be missing the point here because teams like France don't play that way. They don't. Because teams like France are better than everyone. And while England in 2018 was not better than everyone, England in 2024 should be. England in 2024 is, if not France, the next best thing. More talented than basically any other team that they're going to be playing against at the Euros, and vastly more talented than Iceland. But England now, because it's playing the same way that it played in 2018, or the way that Gareth Southgate needed to implement in order to find success, it's not taking advantage of that talent, right? England would not be showing up at the World Cup playing against Australia, right? In the same way that France did at the World Cup in 2022. I don't know why this result comes to mind, right? Where they're playing against Australia, and Australia gets an early goal, and it's like 1-1, but then France just blows them away in the second half. Really, the only instance I can think of in an international setting where that happened was England against, I believe it was Panama. Every other game England's played has been, clinched. Very firmly clinched. Disregarding extenuating circumstances, England's been locked in very, very tight, marginal, score a goal to win type matches. And it's had a lot of success with that. I feel like England can do more. I think everybody is aware of the fact that England can do more. It is an inherent risk. I do not think it is a risk that Gareth Southgate is going to take. I think that if Gareth Southgate, who does have a chance to win this Euros with England, I still think England's the second best team going to the tournament behind France. I've said that on stream multiple times. And them losing to Iceland doesn't change that. It doesn't surprise me at all. Because the margins are lower, so if, maybe Pickford, bit of an error with his positioning, and there's one opening on a particularly nice pass to open up that counter that Iceland scores off of, and that's it. And then you can't break through because Iceland's well-drilled, and they're going to play in a way where they're going to try and control the game through their defense. That's how they play. That's how Iceland wins games, because that's how Iceland has to win games. But this is not how England has to win games. So I will sit here and laugh at England. And also the fact that the United States at the moment that I'm recording this has more wins at the Cricket World Cup than England does too, which is awesome, objectively awesome. It's also a disappointment. It's a waste of the talent that the English national team has. And maybe I'm just appraising the talent wrong. Maybe for whatever reason, I'm just appraising the talent wrong. But I think Harry Kane is a top 2 striker in the world. Right, I think Phil Foden is absolutely a top 5 winger on the planet. And I think they've got a lot more talent going up and down that team, whether it be Bukayo Saka, whether it be Cole Palmer, whether it be Declan Rice or John Stones or Kyle Walker being probably still arguably the best right back in the world. And that's all before you start talking about somebody like Jude Bellingham, who might just be the best player in the world already. When you have that type of team, like I'm just trying to triple check to make sure I'm not blind here. You've got to be able to come out of your shell. You've got to be able to take over a game from the opening whistle and dominate these teams. Because when you show up at the Euros and the World Cup, and you're playing plucky little teams like the USA who drew this England team at the World Cup, even though England's more talented, I'm American. I'm not here trying to argue that, but we managed to get the draw because England's not coming out of its shell trying to beat you up. England's trying to win in the margins and like control the tempo. And no, watch France play, dude. Just watch France play and they overwhelm you. And England should be able to do that. And what was working for Gareth Southgate in 2018, I just don't think it's working anymore. And I do believe that he's willing to change to a certain extent. He's clearly left his Jordan Henderson, Harry Maguire era in the past, right? Calvin Phillips is no longer there. He's brought in some new blood, right? Kobe Mainu is in the team. Cole Palmer is in the team. Wharton is in the team. But unless he's willing to fully change the philosophy with which he has grown this English national setup, I think that England's just always going to be way more susceptible to these kinds of shock upsets, these toothless kinds of upsets, than a team like France is. And that's just because a team like France can bury other teams in a way that England just doesn't seem to be willing to let itself to do. So I'm very interested to see how the Euros plays out, because the narrative is set. If England shows up and it just lays an egg in the group stage, even if it makes it out as a second or third place team, the vitriol and the storm around the English team is going to be pretty overwhelming in a way that will be reminiscent of 2016 when our Icelandic heroes emerged on the international stage for the first time. Just an extra funny thing around the English team that I wanted to point out. The English squad announcement's amazing. If you haven't watched it, it's like 2.5 minutes. I'm not going to show you. They basically introduce every player. But as somebody pointed out, this scene was definitely planned for Madison, but technical issues, which is hilarious because it is 100% true. Because a video of this quality is definitely prepared way in advance. And they absolutely just assumed Madison was going to be on the team. So they got, Luke the Nuke Littler to do a little darts throwing. I mean, this is mad, dude. Like, how does Mainu end? Like, it doesn't make any sense. They'd already filmed this thing with Luke Littler. They're like, oh, we got to put it in anyways. Who are we going to put in there? Kobe Mainu. Sure, that works.